Over the last 25 years, I've had the privilege of interviewing and highlighting some truly interesting people. Everyone who is anyone, both the famous and the infamous, from presidents and their first ladies to kings and queens, movie stars and pop stars, captains of industry, heads of state, sports personalities, innovative entrepreneurs, and some pretty fascinating everyday people. Today, I am extremely proud to introduce you to Joel Aronson, a retired clinical pharmacy specialist who prided himself on being an essential part of the medical and healthcare team by being more connected to his patients and other medical fields and providing a more active role in caring for patients. I have to tell you, Mr. Aronson, as someone who has had health challenges over the years, I loved learning about how special the relationship between a patient and a pharmacist actually is. So, sir, I ask you, what made you first want to become a pharmacist?
Oh, when I was young, I loved mixing ingredients together. So I bought a chemistry set. I really wanted to be a chemical engineer and then a chemist, but I did not do well in calculus, and all the books in chemistry were in German, and I didn't want to learn another language since I already had 6 years of French in high school. So I didn't have to learn another language, and I didn't need calculus, and I was able to mix ingredients together.
That makes complete sense, and I'd love to share with you. I'm a pretty proud mom today. My 16-year-old just got a very high score in his AP chemistry test, so he's feeling pretty on top of the world. I think he's passionate about chemistry himself, so that makes me ask you, what makes you passionate about your work as a pharmacist?
Since I wanted the veterans that I was treating to get the care that I would expect if I was a veteran at the hospital. And so I wanted to make sure that they got the proper care that I could give them and would not want to turn them away. And I tried to help them in every way I could. And this way, when they left, they would give me a thank you for all what I did for them. As an inpatient pharmacist, when a veteran made a phone call, I would answer the phone call and try to help them as much as I could so that they wouldn't have to call the outpatient pharmacy. And the people I work with were criticized me for doing this because I was going out of my way to help the veterans. And I didn't want the veterans to have a hard time to go to the next step.
That makes complete sense, sir. I know that you've been in your line of work for 45 years, so I can imagine that you've seen it all, so to speak. Are there any unusual or otherwise notable stories that you'd like to share with us about your time in the field?
One weekend when I was working at Boston City Hospital as a staff pharmacist, myself, a male pharmacist, and a female pharmacist were working the weekend, and somebody came by in a white lab coat and came into the window in the pharmacy to rob the pharmacy of controlled substances. Um, I had was looking at the night cabinet, and a bottle of Tagamet, 500 tablets, was taken up by the one of the personnel up to the medical floor, and it was my job to go upstairs and retrieve it. And while I was retrieving it, a man in a white lab coat jumped through the pharmacy window, which was unbarred and unscreened.
Wow.
It was a pizza window, and he startled the unsuspecting pharmacist. The female pharmacist, she ran into the pharmacy lounge and got into a tall closed lounge, closed locker, and hid in there. And the other pharmacist, well, he had to deal with the robber. So he went outside, and the robber followed him, and then the pharmacist was able to get and close the door on the robber. And the robber says, "If you don't open the door, I'm going to shoot through it." Well, the pharmacist, he ran into the pharmacy office, and he hid under the secretary's table, which was near to the office. He grabbed the phone, took it under the table, dialed the security office of 4444, and said, "Pharmacy, help, robbery." And when he didn't get a response, he hung up the phone. And meanwhile, the robber, seeing that he couldn't find anybody, he lunges out the front door of the pharmacy and leaves a black satchel leather bag left on the counter. And he ran through the door just as I was arriving back to the pharmacy. So I didn't get a good look at his face of who he was, but we do know he was a a white guy in a lab coat. And
Wow.
the next day they put up bars and screens on the two pizza windows in the pharmacy.
I can't believe that you were in the middle of something like that. You never think that this kind of thing can happen, but I guess you really can. And I understand there was a particular event in 1978 that actually was a highlight for you, not very scary. But tell me about that experience.
Well, February 6, 1978, it was snowing in Boston. They were getting ready for a heavy snowstorm. And I was leaving work and I caught the last bus out of Wonderland Station in Revere to get to my apartment in Revere. And the next day, on Wednesday, the 7th, uh, looking outside, didn't know what the conditions were. I got ready to go to work and found out that there was no buses or underground trains, or I should say above ground trains running because of all the snow. And so I walked to the Maverick Square station in East Boston and was able to catch the Blue Line, which was the first train that was running underground. And I took that train to Government Center, where I was able to catch the Green Line, and took the Green Line to Copley Square, which was the closest train station to Boston City Hospital. Then I trudged through the snow to get to Boston City Hospital. And my work was supposed to start at 8 o'clock in the morning, but I didn't get there till 10:30 a.m. And then when I left at 4:30 p.m., I was told I could stay overnight if I wanted to, but I felt I'd be better off at home in my own apartment. So I left the hospital and I walked over to the Copley Square station, caught the Green Line to Government Center, and then transferred to the Blue Line to get to Maverick Square, East Boston, then walked from Maverick Square to Revere to my warm apartment and got there around 9:30 p.m. at night. And the next day, which was Wednesday, I found out I couldn't go anywhere because all the streets around me were all flooded because the ocean had overflowed, and therefore I had to stay home and call out for that day. But Thursday, things improved and I had a much easier commute getting back to work. And because I worked during the blizzard, I got a commendation from Boston City Hospital for working in the blizzard, and it was put in my personnel file.
Well, fantastic. I mean, we need public servants, if you will, and I guess I need to start thinking of a local pharmacist as a public servant is the way we need to start to think about it. You know, interestingly enough, you've had such a long career. How do you think your career has evolved over the years to the point where you are now?
Well, first, when I first started, it was pouring liquids into bottles and counting pills into bottles without knowing what the medications were being used for to treat patients. And then we came to paper profiles where you had patients' medications listed and patients' allergies, and you had an idea what the patients were getting for their medications. And then we went to unit dose, where the medications were prepackaged into individual packets, and doctors wrote the orders on sheets of paper, and you were able to translate what was being written down on these pages so that you could identify what the patients needed to take care of their problem. After unit dose came automation with Pyxis, and those machines would like vending machines, and what they would do is they would dispense medications to the patient out of either a drawer or a spring, and then you'd have barcoding, where the barcodes were on the medications, and they would have to be checked with the patient's wristband, which was also barcoded, so that the patient would get his medications accurately. And finally, when the computers came into being, physicians then entered their orders into the computer so that pharmacists could verify them accurately. And that's what was probably the best thing that happened then.
Mr. Aronson, what traits do you think make you a good pharmacist? And specifically, what other qualities do you think the job demands from a person?
You have to be compassionate, you have to be accurate, you have to be understanding, You got to be able to handle responsibility. You have to be able to follow rules and regulations, be able to do your job by yourself without having to deal with management supervision looking over your shoulder so that you could work independently, be able to find the right answers for the questions from all types of people, being patients or medical personnel, and to make sure that you get your job done accurately and done on time.
And, sir, finally, what would be the one thing you would like a viewer of this video feature to walk away with, since you have been sharing all of your insight into your amazingly long career?
As a clinical pharmacy specialist, it is your job to make sure that when you're taking care of patients, that they get the best care available and that they get the best care available and affordable without any reservations.
And Mr. Aronson, I really do thank you very much again for that long and dedicated career to making sure that all of the different parts of the medical system is there to treat the patient. Thank you again.